Hi, everybody. It's a gorgeous day in Ottawa, still cold, no snow, as of yesterday. So I hope everybody out there is doing well and keeping your distance from each other and trying to wash your hands as often as possible and trying not to listen to the rhetoric that's going on about going to the beach. We don't have a problem here in Ottawa, but nonetheless, there are other beaches to be looked at. I'd like to tackle a question by Michael Brawley. I didn't quite have time to do it. And so we're going to do it in a long-winded sort of way. I just want to talk a little bit first about the relationship that we have with energy coming into us from what you might call the soul structure. And what I mean by that is the energy moving through the Zephyrot or the chakras or whatever they might be named. And not even talking about the many, many levels of these energy flows operating through, but primarily focusing on two levels of operation. Number one, the construction of a personality, which if you could picture energy coming from 3 or 4 or 5 hoses at us, and we're completely happy to have that happen. It makes us feel good, and we use that energy or water or whatever you want to call it to construct a form. We call that form personality. It engages with how we learn from our parental backgrounds and how we copy from our backgrounds, our rendition of copying, by the way, but nonetheless still copying, and do pretty good job at that, actually. And how we move so quickly through the copying and the renderings that we consider valuable, that we how we construct a personality and how it should be shaped from our perspective. And we build quite an amazing array of interactive flow, meaning physical, emotional, and kind of mental relationship with how we protect ourselves, meaning protect the form that we're building as we move along in the building process. And of course, when it's semi-completed, it never does ever get complete. But if you could picture a kind of a field of, let's say, at least 3 or 4 frequencies, different kinds of people talk about colors all the time to try and explain this. It doesn't really explain it, because all that they do is make one color better than another color, which is, by the way, what we do, make one person better than another, and one way of saying something better than another. And there are some rules about speaking and writing, and also cultural rules, sociological rules about how one thinks one should be based on where you live. Primarily, these are valuable and unto ourselves. I mean, we call them valuable. And others around us, if they're happy with how we've constructed these forms, then they call them valuable. That's why we're constantly engaged with selling the forms or the way you act better than or different than somebody else's. We do this because this is the nature of how people live and survive here on these particular planes. It's neither good nor bad, right or wrong, but the issue is we can get pretty creative in how those structures are developed. Okay, now that's what we're doing with those energies coming into us. They're coming into us through valves or chakras, or they seem rounded, and from some people's point of view, Hindu Buddhist point of view, others kind of rounded, like fireballs, meaning in the old tradition, fire was related to a symbol of energy coming into us. And energy flows through, we use the energy habitually to strengthen habitual orientations or things that we naturally do because we have taken them on, and that's part of the way we live. We do this, and we think that we are quite unique in how we construct this form. And then we sell it. And we protect it. And we don't quite understand that we're doing this. And how could that possibly happen? That someone would sell a personality type or a way, the way they're living. And the act of going, is what we're selling. We don't quite consciously become aware of how we function. And if we do, we start to get a little bit critical, or we start to get thinking that that is the best way to function. There are so many different styles and methods of engaging with life. And we like to, let's say, allow as many as possible, but especially protecting our own. And by the way, that's what everyone else is doing, protecting their own. Okay, all right. I'm just giving you kind of a summarization, simplistic maybe from many points of view, because we like to make things very difficult and very complicated. So this is a form that we create based on energy coming in, and we have no conscious awareness of doing it. That's one aspect of the unconscious. Some don't even believe in the unconscious, but we have reactions that are pretty well similar based on what we think will protect us and how we engage with life and others. So there is never, it's not going to run out. The energy to do those things is never going to run out. So what we're looking at is constructing a conscious awareness of the fact that we do something like that and how we do it, as if it's just slightly over there. So if it's not in here only, this is a trick, by the way, then it's over there, and we can look at it and we can respond and notice our responses and not necessarily agree with our responses if we remember that that being that we're watching over there is us. So the energy is given to us to do so. But just a minute. It's also given to us not to do so. It's an act of love from those structures, that soul structure, through that structure for the purpose of enabling you to maintain or slowly adapt beyond the conscious structure that you've already considered the only one to have into a conscious structure a little broader than the one that you've already constructed and protect. All right, that includes defensive mechanisms like fear, like disrespect for everybody else's view, like acknowledging only a particular way of seeing something, or allowing yourself not to consider something beyond what you can. Now, that means not being negative. It means right now, this is how I see the world. Tomorrow, it may be different. Acknowledging that there is a tomorrow as opposed to having to only be how you are today. Well, yeah, that sounds like double talk. Okay, well, let it be double talk. Now, here you have a structure then. That structure holds you in a position to be non-adaptive because there is an internal reflex that says, if I adapt broader than what I'm used to, speak or engage differently, live life slightly differently than I'm used to, I will feel uncomfortable. And it's absolutely true. We have a tendency to idealize in both directions. If you idealize, you have a tendency to think that there is only one way to see something. If you idealize in a negative direction, then you're idealizing an opinion that you have about you. You can only be, even if you're negative towards you, you're still idealizing because there are other ways to look at anything that is engaged with life. This is, of course, very difficult in the land of rules. There are many. Now, I'd like to talk about the fact that this energy coming in with its hope, with its love for us, wants us to continue doing what we're doing in any given second until we decide that may not be the way we need to do things. You can only do that, perhaps, by perceiving consciously that you're actually doing something. Otherwise, why would you change anything? It's all reflexes. Yes, that can be astral, that can be physical, that can be also in the quarter of mental structure as well. But that second that you see something that you would like to soften down or do something slightly different is extremely difficult to make an adjustment that will last forever, because this is the way we think. Once you make an adjustment, that will always be it. You'll never have to worry about that again. It's not real. It's magical thinking. In other words, you have a belief that that would be true. You have a hope that that would be true. You also have a belief and a hope that you can go back to what you were doing before and do it slightly differently, and it'll be okay then. This is the norm of us. Still that solid construction, whether it be physical emotion, physical mental intensity, or just plain physical interactive, structurally engaging precisely how you believe you need to be validated as an individual. It usually means your fear is that you're not going to be validated by others or yourself. All right. That's a condition of humanity. It is not negative. It's how we are. It's how we do things. There are varying degrees of these things. And you hand out varying shapes and sizes of trophies to yourself based on how you are able to continue doing whatever you think you need to do without broadening beyond a structure that holds you in a position of not being able to handle more energy moving of the same frequencies moving through you, because if there is more there, you will automatically see more within, react more, and be tremendously uncomfortable. So what one calls spiritual development goes very slowly in our world. Now let's take a little look at this increasing of energy. Energy can increase to a tremendous amount. And you can even be involved with doing things that are different than the average. Seeing personality orientations in others. Seeing frequencies, for example. Seeing within you much more than you need to see in the life of another. But if you begin to assess and judge these things, you are engaging as if you are elevated, and that personality construction will hold you in that gift, if you call it a gift. It's not always a gift, by the way. Hold you there because you cannot let go of the way you idealize how things should be. So you'll ask this question of yourself: what is a spiritual person supposed to be? Good question. You have many answers. More energy coming into an individual than what is average puts them in a position to see more of themselves than they need to want to maintain how they were before. Remember, we just talked about this. This is a natural, normal human way of engaging. Energy comes in to help you continue to do what you're doing so that ultimately you can see it yourself and become like a higher state being and have compassion and understanding, actually a sense of love for the person who is growing and cannot yet understand that they are holding themselves in a position that they believe is wondrous for them. It puts them into a superior position somehow in our world. We live in a power structure world. We don't live in a deeply understanding world or deeply loving or compassionate world, but there is love and compassion at the deepest level operating into us. It gets converted, just like a song playing in the key of C gets converted to playing in E. Apparently, it's easier on the ears for some. It's converted into the renderings related to an individual and the way they think they need to be them. Nothing negative there, just how it works for all of us. What I'm trying to advocate is the recognition of how you function reflexively when you don't want to see it enables you to construct an internal lens that slowly enables you to see within you with no negation, or at least less negation about how you function. There's a kind of just, you don't necessarily agree with how you function there, and slowly you begin to try and function differently under similar circumstances. You do that because you're not trying to be judgmental of another. You're not trying to be judgmental of yourself. You're just trying to recognize the construction of you as a form. And if you are asking questions about the construction of a bridge and you were an engineer, you might suggest a few things that would help in the internal strengthening of that bridge, that road, on which people would walk, drive, and you would trying to be helpful for the purpose of going beyond the present plan of the bridge. That's all, nothing else. It seems that those higher states have a very deep love for us, in that, certainly under certain circumstances, there is a number of hints that you can get from that inner love, but it's trying to get us to become more conscious so we can move slightly beyond the protective nature that we have, that has the ache to justify and protect how we function in its exact terms relating to an idealistic way of, we believe, is the way to live. And the only one, by the way. There's a lot of emphasis on one way versus another way, all of this kind of thing. So learning how to broaden that out seems to be, from a higher state's point of view, an act of love. However, we are young and we are learning how to do this. So we don't yet know that our personality is meant to be a lens through which we can watch and see and interact with and move through and be moved through by that higher state. We do not understand this. We would think it would be nonsense in many quarters of so-called esoteric growth, spiritual growth. We would be thought of as rather silly to think that we are not on a road to build our personalities up so capably that we will be able to be like gods in the eyes of ourselves and others, because we can do stuff like fly, like be the only right, like see things in the personality that are not so great in others, without even trying to help them, just judging them. This is a door stopper. This kind of engagement is a form that cannot see through itself. It sees itself as superior. There's no dialogue within the self with the higher state. There's a personalized dialogue that validates and justifies actions, reactions, wishes, desires of the individual to be very important, because there is a level of insecurity in doing this. Then those higher states continue to help you to do that so that you can be less eventually insecure and not consider that a valuable position to express. Then what other valuable position would there be to express if that one isn't the apex of our humanity, one could say? Another way to look at it is, just another way to look at it. Ultimately, this form is a form through which one can watch through and in itself to clear up a view of what is occurring that is biased based on their personalities' advocacies in relationship to how they were brought up, or the culture they live in, or the branch of engagement with life that they're involved with, or their version of what one needs to be important, or you add the rest. It doesn't matter. So what then are we looking at in our relationship with our day-to-day as a growing being? In Mike's question, he went out to get some essentials for, during this time. And it's true, people can be anxious and have tension because this is a very disabling disease. And it's not one that anyone in their right mind would say that they would like to encounter. But it's very interesting. These higher states tend to use anything and everything. So, along that line, Mike goes in, and when he walks into a store, legitimately, he gets kind of a tension headache or an energy in the side of his head. I hope I get this right, Michael. And he's wondering whether this is probably caused by him being concerned about the people out there and what effects they could have on him if they have this particular disease that is pandemically active. And I came up with something. I said, well, it's possible, yeah, but it may also be an opportunity to attempt to perceive where this energy is flowing inside. I'm not sure if I used these words or not, so I apologize for not using, or if I did use these words, fine. Likely didn't. To perceive energy coming in from the centers that are activated in the soul structure, either physically, emotionally, or mentally. Because you can look at that personality like it's a combination of forces, emotional, physical, and mental, and how we put them together. So building a lens to notice is to, as Mike can be, from time to time, as he says, aware that the root center or the gonad center might be on, but the most awareness that one would have would be the physical part of a response in his case, the brow or the side of the head. And then attempting to search back, see if there's any part when, oh my God, my head is really, really strong. Okay, now where does this come from? Slowly trying to be aware all through his form, mental awareness, mental physical almost, mental emotional, trying to figure out where the responses are coming from, feeling that root center, sensing it, having a reaction internally, also from reacting to the brow and tension, and noticing more energy is coming from the root gonad center combination and the solar plexus, and moving up his back on one side and slightly on the other into his head differently than under normal circumstances. He is noticing the differences through a lens, through a conscious awareness. One usually talks about conscious awareness. We don't normally talk about lenses, although other people have talked about inner sight, lenses, all kinds of things. It just doesn't matter what you use. Definitions are less important than actual occurrences. Experiential engagements, conscious awareness is very valuable in allowing you to move away from the vulnerability of a personality's natural reflex reaction to be the same as it always was before, natural, normal. Also, to inquire, to discover, to recognize, to realize a link between the persona structure by using a little smack, a little bit of an awareness. You are building a lens. The difficulty with lenses is they are described. Do your best not to describe them. Do your best to perceive through them, not relative to a person, but relative to the soul structure. Meaning, check out where the energy is coming in through the root center, gonad center, solar plexus. And you can see now, as you're listening, perhaps you will notice a little ring around the top of the head where it's touching the crown center and linking up to the back behind you, which is trying to open the bottom of that heart center, because the solar plexus, or the emotional disposition, is linked strongly and affirmed in it. That is a wonder. That is an engagement with an experience that is attempting to help you to open a lens. We are used to describing and then coming up with a conclusion. That concluding part elevates our understanding and us as a personality to be, at least have an opinion about what it might be. And that is important in our world. But in the world of higher states, watching to see what is going on is more important. The decision-making process about how the personality makes up its mind about what it means is not something that will remain the same. But we believe if we defend it, it will. And it will also allow us, and I'm not talking about Mike in this case, I'm talking about everyone and how we do things. It will allow us to think that we know something. And every time we get to see something, it's slightly different than what it was before. That's an encouragement from another state to enable us to go beyond this constant utilization of a reflex to remain the same, or to protect how we were previously as a personality structure or persona, an image that has to be validated. Otherwise, there's a great fear of loss of something. Usually it's loss of face that never was there. Face changes. I was talking to somebody today, and we were talking about engaging with 10 friends. 2 of us walk down this great city in God knows where, and we meet 10 friends intermittently, but yes, 10 friends. And we automatically know that we must act in a certain way, slightly different, to align with each and every friend, slightly differently. You pay no attention to this. You don't know how flexible you are. But the flexibility that you have in mind in that place is for the protection of you and the personas that you are projecting onto others for the purpose of being validated as an important person, or a person that's worthy of being called important. That's just a word. And importance has a coarser level and has a more elegant level, and there's a huge continuum. And that continuum remains there for the purpose of helping us to survive in planes as coarse as the ones that we currently live in. The planes are not negative. They're just coarser. The way we are brought up to survive these planes are really reminiscent of old feudal times, and they will remain that way. If you are cheered on by many who think that you're able, you have a position, a place in a more refined position. If you are a great shot, like my father was, a pretty good shot and he used to go to the uh, what they called the armories, and shoot in the summertime. And he was a pretty good shot, so he was recognized as a very able shot. But he was an introvert. He hardly said about 10, 15 words in hours of engagement with people. Some people would say, oh, well, that's not, couldn't have been very able because he couldn't speak or didn't speak that much. It was just a different, whatever cultural arrangement that you believe you're a part of, you stick your persona in there to engage the best you possibly can because you don't want to be in your world left behind. Behind what? Who knows? I think in the world of engaging with higher states, there is a much higher level of compassion and understanding about people. A person can come into these planes a great champion of, in those times, a wondrous queen or king, well known, considered of great value, comes in and becomes hardly well known at all, feels off, whoever, and they may have been a male in one life and now comes in a female in this one, and somehow they feel let down, unable. Somehow they need to be more forceful, more engaging, and well, we have a culture that can supply all these things. But if that individual in a previous life knew for sure that it was their obligation to do what they could do for this queen or king, because this time they were a warrior, like in the Gita, there must be the warrior in that life. This one, they come in as a female and they're trying to understand the relationship of themselves under different circumstances. And it is very difficult to do so. The other life is pouring in with the intensity that it may have had before. But the person is attempting to find a balance in this life. But it's still favored by the influx of a kind of coarser engagement because they were quite effective in a previous life in that position because they needed to. Slowly, as that lens gets stronger within that individual, they will look at themselves and understand that softer now is important, and perhaps even kindness, which was very restrictive in the previous life, becomes in the forefront of this life. Now, kindness in terms of how they see themselves, slowly broadening that out until they can see the great difficulty that each and every one of us have in just being human, just being okay. This lens is very important because it's a lens that only occurs in the action of an individual pulling back from how they believe they have to be their version of really able. You can be really able in that pulling back, but you will know there's going to be backwash in it. You will be upset at yourself. You'll be upset at others for not noticing. And that automatic reflex will be increased because you already are trained to use it in the ways that you do use it, unknown to you. Sounds pretty complicated, but it's not very. The issue in this is that everything is touched. Every opportunity is taken advantage of by those higher states to get you to become more able to see within how you function without. And that enables you to handle more energy coming in, because you automatically know if more energy is coming into you, you will act intensely to protect you. It's an automatic, it's unconscious, to protect you even more than you were trained to protect your version of where you sit in the face of the world you live in now. I'm not sure we're very capable of being idealistic in that realm, although when you listen to people, they are truly endowed with verbiage that talks directly about how important one is for being spiritual. The old ancient sages knew one thing, and they knew it well. As they knew, they used to call it knowing or seeing. It had nothing to do with the eyes. It had nothing to do with the intellect, because the intellect was so broad, not in terms of logic, but in terms of perceiving deeply inside you the world. You could see the world in you. You're training your reactions not to smother you from being okay with understanding broader the realm of movement towards higher states and the links between these coarser states and higher states that are being cultivated for the purpose of helping others. How would it help others? More energy will be able to flow through you, because when you have things like these headaches and going on, you begin to realize, okay, this is energy. Let me just see where it's coming from. Now let me move that slowly and softly by either talking to it, using energy on it, trying to link with that higher state and asking that it be softer, because you're just giving feedback through you to you. It is part of you, that higher state, but it is not personalized in a way that you can take credit for it. It's within you. You are learning like a student. As long as you keep that in mind, it's a little safer. We all are painted with the brush of wanting to be more able than we believe we are. That brush comes out of living in a very coarse world, a youthful one that has been trained to maintain a youthful outlook. And we will maintain that for quite a while, because whoever wants to be talked out of being the most important person on the planet? And we have that kind of small idealistic orientation going on in us, and it is not negative. It's how we survive. It's also not positive. It's how we hold ourselves from growing beyond where we are now. It's neither right nor wrong. It's just what is. In Mike's case, when he walks into that system, that engagement with necessities that he's looking for, automatically that system within him increases. A little bit of an increase shoves that energy up through him to link up and fuse because of intensity that may occur there, or just because he's available to have that happen. Flow goes into his head, it causes a headache, but also he's stretched a bit. As he leaves, and it could stay there for a week, a day, an hour, a minute, but the stretch has already occurred. He can grow now a little bit more beyond where he was before, with seeing if he chooses to be okay with taking a look inside about how things are when he's engaging with life. But truly, him, you, and I, and everyone we know will attempt to protect themselves from seeing how we are, because we are trained in assessing and judging that to be different than the ideal that we hold. It's basic fiction, but it helps us to survive. It touches us deeply. For those who are emotionally sensitive, it touches us in a reflexive manner so that we react and immediately protect. No matter what, this vulnerable sense that we have of engaging with the world that we live in. No one is perfect. We go through these systems, but the biggest part is we're learning. I love that business of not putting a new wine in an old wine flask. We have an old personality construct. We all do. And as we get anywhere past about 18 or 19 or 20, whatever, the big date was for some was around 30. And we believe that we've constructed a form functional enough to maintain. And in doing so, we're always doing so unconsciously. Then any new wine, any new energy coming in that is different than how it only helps us to maintain what we had before, or just add a little bit, but maintain generally the main center of our engagement with life. Anything past that, it really gives us a hard time. New wine, new flow of higher frequency, higher intensity. And I'm not talking about colors here. I'm talking about, on a continuum, from coarser to more, the most elegant capability of handling flow, the most powerful flow, and engaging as if it's just a feather, so soft and elegant with our personalities, because that's the wine flask. So the wine flask is constantly being adjusted, but not forcefully. It's the owner is seeing within and helping the best they can, speck by speck by speck, which allows the owner to ignore what it honors and believes is so wonderful and put its focus more on trying to help it to be able to handle more flow for the purpose of it moving through us in wherever our fusion or links have occurred for the purpose of helping others to do the same thing. So you end up helping others to be as able or more than you. Not because it's great and wondrous to do. It's because, this is the reason why the link-ups between higher states and the lower states, and the only way it can occur is through it happening in a you, whoever you may be, And it isn't gender oriented. It has nothing to do with all that stuff and it's not racially focused. All of that stuff is so interesting. How can we even come up with this? Oh, mainly because this is how we had been cultivated. We've done this. We fear people who are different than us. The old sages used to say one thing: don't tell anybody. They will fear you, and that fear will turn to jealousy. That jealousy will turn to harming you. You will not be able to do what you came for. They talk this way. Weird. But boy, they were pretty understanding. And they helped us a lot to continue on in our inner growing. Hopefully, we can grow to the point where we can help others as well. And they won't even know it's whoever us is that is doing it. Because they will see things in terms of the personas, the personality, that is legitimately attempting to be more important within themselves than any others. We don't like to hear that that's what we're thinking or doing, but it is an aspect of how we function in the world. Michael, I hope this, I will have to thank you, first of all, for giving me this question, to give me an opportunity to stretch it out beyond what the question actually was. Was that energy that which I was perceiving from other people? Yes. Also from you, also from a higher state, trying to help you to construct that lens within you and know that every time that occurs, you can practice cultivating a lens. That practice of cultivating means noticing, paying attention, being willing to forget a couple of things in the store, maybe, or carrying something in your hand that reminds you what you need to get, and just practicing, attempting, and then letting it go. The stretch within helps you to have more energy pass through you and you not call it yours. I hope everyone is healthy and hopefully this thing gets over in the next few months or so, but we don't know that yet. Absolutely. Take care, everybody.
Meditation.
Good night. And we're going to meditate. Yes, of course. Thanks, Marian.
So just begin to close off now in the way that you normally would.